Hello, everyone, and welcome to Student Housing Unlocked, multi-housing news' podcast series that delves into investments, strategies, operations, and different approaches in the student housing sector. Olivia Bunescu, Senior Associate Editor, and for this episode, I'm joined by Beryl DePalma Alder, AIA Associate and Senior Project Designer at Moody Nolan, where she's been designing transformative spaces for over 12 and a half years. As the firm focuses on purposeful design and we recognize Mental Health Awareness Month, Beryl brings some insights into how architecture can support students' well being. From biophilic design and material choices to color psychology and adaptable layouts, Beryl shares how thoughtful student housing can foster connection, reflection, and emotional well being. Whether you're designing the next generation of residence halls or rethinking existing spaces, this conversation will inspire you to take a deeper look at how design can truly make a difference. Hi,
Olivia, it's good to meet you.
good to meet you too. How are you?
Good, doing well, thanks.
Thank you very much for accepting my invitation to Student Housing Unlocked, which is a podcast series that discusses everything student housing related, from investment to management to development and design. Today, we're going to discuss a bit about purposeful design in student housing. So, I'm going to go ahead and start with the basics and ask you, how do you define purposeful design in student housing today? How has it evolved to meet today's wellness needs of students?
Well, for us, I think purposeful design begins by identifying like a specific issue or challenge, something that we've observed that isn't working well, such as students feeling isolated, stressed, or disconnected, and then intentionally creating spaces that address and solve that problem through like evidence-based solutions, things that are proven that support the needs of the students. And I just want to say, historically, student housing was this utilitarian idea focused on just capacity and cost efficiency. For instance, schools would use a 100,000 square foot building and try to max it out with as many units as possible for cost effectiveness without consideration of other things, how the students were feeling about that. And over time, as research connected environmental factors with students' outcomes, like academic performance and mental health, or even retention for their university, which is a big topic, institutions began to redesign housing with well-being as a driving goal. And we're seeing a lot of that accommodation with so many more factors today within our designs.
I've noticed that this trend has risen since the pandemic, and more designers and developers are integrating wellness spaces to make sure that students are connected.
Right.
What are some specific architectural or design features that you consider a part of purposeful design?
I think a reoccurring theme in design considerations would be natural light and views of nature through the campus. Natural light really does improve the mood of the student and sleep and that cognitive function of the student. So a lot of times in the residence rooms themselves, the bedrooms, we have large windows per room, and we sometimes incorporate plant life in the community spaces, and we try to do a lot of outdoor study spaces. At Meharry Medical College, at their Living Learning Center that we just completed, we integrated 2 large open outdoor terraces for their graduate students to help study without having to actually leave their residence hall. Also, we feel like there's a sense of belonging with students academically and socially for the social spaces that we provide within residence halls. And those typically are communal kitchens. You'll start seeing a little bit more lounge spaces per floor that where students can come together. And then multi-purpose rooms, I think, are a new idea that not necessarily living learning, but flexible, large instruction spaces that encourage interaction where they could have a variation of different activities within the building. Noise is one of those stress inducers, I think, and it reduces the focus of students. So we do have quiet zones and acoustic treatments that we provide within certain spaces, like baffles and soundproofing between rooms and that kind of thing. And then sometimes, depending on where you're coming from or your emotional state. Sometimes there's a lot of trauma that is coming in that you don't know about. And some students very much prefer calming color palettes and wayfinding, which is something we also don't really highlight. Something about that is that wayfinding can be very chaotic if it's not done well, and it adds to the stress of the user. So we add those kinds of things to the building, private, secure spaces for students, and then just having flexible study environments, mixing it up in different ways that the students can benefit from that. Having a variety of different study areas where you could have 10 people or 2 people or solo study pods. We're seeing that as very common these days. And then lastly, I'd like to say that our equitable design and inclusiveness in certain spaces, they can improve retention and satisfaction for some of the more marginalized groups. For instance, we're talking a lot about gender inclusive restrooms, ADA accessible rooms that we've increased on certain projects just because of the residents that were coming in on many campuses, but specifically one at East Tennessee State University. We're moving towards en-suite restrooms, our scholars program, which are more private apartment style design ideas where students can feel a little bit more comfortable. And we've also seen spa baths, which are just a toilet, a restroom, and shower with a changing area that are private in lieu of what we see community style restrooms just for more privacy. We're seeing those types of things.
All right, thank you. You mentioned briefly a few projects before. Can you share more details about some other recent projects where you showcase your approach to wellness and thoughtful design?
Yes. At Tennessee State University, for instance, we tried to create a diverse range of living accommodations. We offered a variety of room types that ensured that all of the students there, whether they're undergraduate or resident assistants or students with specific needs, have an option that suited them socially in the space. We offered a variation such as like pod doubles, semi-suites, single bedrooms, and the addition we had on the upper levels, and the university can charge more money for these, but they're a nice option, apartment style suites with private bedrooms, living spaces, and kitchenettes appeal to students looking for more independence, while the single living apartments for older students or those we have like service animal options that were on the first level that had that extra privacy and accommodation that they may have required. And just by diversifying all of these options, we created a more inclusive environment for all the students. And then at the same university, we created lounge spaces that are on each one of the floors. And the lounge spaces had floor to ceiling glass to provide an emphasis on transparency and daylighting within the space. And it was more comfortable and conducive to collaboration. And a different kind of feature is that we also had salon spaces on every other floor designed to foster that community, enhance students' well-being. These were helping students connect, relax, reduce stress within their environment. And this is a space where students can not only look their best, but feel their best. And that helps with their mental well-being while on campus and that sense of belonging or connectivity. We also had 4 retail dining spaces, which is a new thing that you're seeing. Sometimes they integrate those types of dining spaces on campus residence halls, and they led out to an integrated courtyard, this interior outdoor connection where the courtyards all had different personalities. The one that was next to dining was strategically positioned to encourage students to eat together, for instance. And another courtyard was well suited for physical activity that supported like frisbee or soccer or flag football. Third courtyard was an extension of the flexible instruction space that seated like 150 or more. And that was more private, and it had fixed furniture and landscaping that screens it from the parking that was behind it. But all of these had different ideas or personalities to them. And on another university, we also, gaming has become a new idea that is integrated even professionally and competitively. And we usually have esports in the larger kind of student centers because there's more capacity to hold competitions, but we integrated it into a residence hall at Legacy Hall at Morgan State University. So there's a esports within one of their residence halls there, and that was a fun feature for students to gather and connect.
I wasn't university that fun when I was going to
I
university.
know, same.
So we know that May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I wanted to ask you, why is wellness focused design important in this context, in your opinion, and to what extent can design impact students' mental health?
Well, college students today, like we just talked about this, we didn't have this, and there are unprecedented levels of stress and anxiety and loneliness within campuses today. And we really feel like it's important to design spaces that support that mental wellness and help reduce the pressures that they're seeing today before they escalate into something worse with each one of the students. I'd like to bring up the technology factor within this because the amount of technology can play a very unwelcome hand at times for this. You're constantly available through devices and social media. There's more information that's being fed across the board to all students. It's more than ever before, and students have a hard time processing it, prioritizing what's important about the information coming to them, and it becomes hard to focus, and it leads to anxiety. And they almost don't have time to sit in silence, which is needed for mental health. And some of the things that we think about is that design is this preventive care idea. In the same way that healthcare might focus on prevention today, student housing design can help reduce the need for crisis interventions by embedding wellness into the daily life of students. So we look at things like research shows us this is evidence-based design that is proven for the students' mood and behavior. So lighting, again, is that common element, that access to natural light that can affect your circadian rhythm and improve mood and sleep. We also address acoustics, and we have these community areas that we've introduced that reduce that loneliness and promote that sense of belonging with students now. Privacy and control of those types of spaces, the more communal spaces, separating those so that they can have options to retreat when they would like to. And then lastly, we use color and nature and texture within our materials, calming palettes to control the amount of mood when they need to slow down or when they want to promote that kind of emotional regulation on spaces.
I was about to ask you about some certain particularities when it comes to design, specifically color and materials. If you have any go-to options when you're designing a space, you said a calming palette. Could you give us some examples of that and some examples of some materials that you avoid or specifically include in a space to help with students' well-being and mental health?
Yeah, so neutral colors and spaces that may change the mood, as I mentioned before, such as in the bedrooms. Those are calming colors in the bedrooms to have that flexibility and the need for change that might happen in that space over time. And then sensory informed design, we use more earth tone colors throughout the building as a calming palette. And you generally have more neutral colors in the residence rooms versus the more public spaces that reduce the stress and allow students to focus more easily. But sometimes I wanted to bring up branding because you see this in a lot of the residence halls. Branding is used in public spaces a lot of times, and typically these colors are more saturated and they're bright for student branding colors, and they encourage that kind of sense of belonging. We go to this university, we really like it, and we're coming together collectively. And sometimes they have a big community room where students can converge together and convene to watch a game or in larger groups. So a lot of those bright, colorful things can also connect to being happy and that kind of thing. So I think it's a variation of that, but you'll see branding also play a role in that as well.
There's also been a growing interest in biophilic design as it allows residents to feel more connected to nature And studies show that nature helps with physical, mental, and emotional well-being. How do you bring nature into student spaces through purposeful design?
Just as everybody would imagine, one of the things we do is prioritize the view and the access to nature. So we position windows with framing the exterior, which would be trees or gardens or courtyard if it's not directly inside the room itself. So having that visual next to your bed, for instance, really attributes to that design element. And ground level rooms also can open up into green spaces whenever possible. We've done that on several universities, and like passive exposure to greenery has also been shown to reduce heart rate and improve attention span, that kind of thing. So we try to integrate that. And then some of the materials that we use are, even if it's not a real wood, we integrate like wood and stone and elements in flooring like wool elements and wall treatments to evoke like outdoor spaces. And they're not just used in this way as being aesthetic, but they're very tactile comfort ideas and softer sensory environment factors that play into like our furniture choices, like soft seating and that kind of thing. So we incorporate sometimes plants and that thrive indoors and purify the air, those types of things. So we also, on one of our projects, we're integrating a biophilic pattern that just suggests nature inspired motifs in the flooring and wall graphics. And I think that is a very calming idea without it being kind of cliche, while still triggering a positive like psychological response.
That's so beautiful. I would have loved to have a room that opened up into the nature so you can get a better idea of how here we don't have a purpose-built student housing. We all used to live at the dorms. So
Oh, right.
basically, the dorms I used to live in, we were five people in the same room. And
Oh,
those
wow.
were
Yeah.
like apartment complexes, a normal
Yes. Uh-huh.
building with several rooms. We were five people. We had a communal bathroom, a communal
Yes.
kitchen. The
Yes.
landscaping was beautiful. We had a lot of
Yeah.
greenery,
Yes.
but we had no privacy. And the rooms were also bright yellow. So we
Yes. I
didn't
know
have,
that I've experienced the same.
I'm
It's
kind
so,
a bit jealous when I
yes, same.
do
Yeah.
interviews.
It's changed so much. We've accommodated so many more factors within student housing, but I know how you feel. Experience the exact same thing.
All right. Could you talk a bit about the amenities that have proven most effective in encouraging balance, rest, and connection, and the ones that you mostly integrate in your projects?
Yeah, I think we integrate some of the amenities that we have are outdoor spaces that we just talked about. And we also encourage larger kind of community spaces within each room. We also have like kitchenettes, those kind of shared lounge spaces that we feel are important to each one of the floors that the students live in so that they can gather in a small group or in a larger group. And so we also integrate as much as we can outdoor spaces, and like the private toilet rooms, I think were very important to us. Let's see. Sometimes we also encourage like meditation rooms or quiet rooms. Students need that mental rest, and we most of the time have some kind of quiet room. We try to integrate these as easily accessible spaces that are away from those kind of high traffic zones that you see within the corridors or near the first level. And then also just one idea that we have are fitness rooms that are usually within the building, and that kind of reduces anxiety. We haven't necessarily done a dance room or that kind of thing or gym, but we do have fitness rooms that boast the mood or anxiety, reduce the anxiety of students. And we also have like lounges, I think, that support a better academic performance and mental health. We have short breaks where students can take with various types of other groups. And then we integrate that soft seating and lower lighting with no digital screens. Sometimes it's just designed for decompression or not to be distracted kind of areas. So those are a few things that we do.
Right. And flexibility is also one of the top concerns for students today. How do you integrate flexibility into your design so that they evolve with students' changing needs?
Well, I think one of the big ideas is that we use furniture that can be adapted to the room. So, movable furniture, mobile furniture is one of those ideas, and where the rooms can be reconfigurable in a moment's notice. So, a lot of times these are changing day by day, and students are getting more addressing these needs within their rooms. Like, we need a refrigerator, we have a microwave, we have TVs. And so, the idea that you can arrange the room in different configurations is also important. So we don't just copy and paste everything. We just look at the needs of the campus and that particular situation in each one of the rooms. But a lot of times we like to adapt to the room configurations and having furniture that can be arranged in different spaces and shared spaces that can both be collaborative and where you can be in solitude, and different infrastructure within the building that can be upgraded. And that tech that I was talking about earlier, we're integrating those kind of needs within the desk areas of the rooms. So those are some of the things that we do for the rooms and making them as most adaptable as possible.
That's a great idea. I haven't heard that before. I have heard from investors and developers that they're using standard layouts, but adaptable furniture is actually a pretty good idea when it comes to student
Yeah,
housing.
modular is really what I'm saying. And so if you have fixed furniture, we're not really seeing that so much because it locks you into a certain configuration of the room. So I do think common idea is that if they want to upgrade furniture in the room, mostly storage is what I'm talking about. They can do that and arrange the room in different ways to adapt to changing needs of their university.
Mhm. And lastly, for companies or institutions looking to update their student housing properties, where's the best place to start if they want to prioritize mental health? What would be your advice for them?
That they just need to look to the students and engage the students. And a lot of times the students are no better than the people that are designing for them. They can look at the students, all of the spaces that we design for students and how they're adaptable. But a lot of times I think it's just a personal connection with the students and listening and not designing so much and understanding the need before you do anything. So engaging them directly, maybe with interviews or workshops, and asking questions like, where do you feel calm and where do you feel overwhelmed, and what spaces do you avoid and what spaces do you enjoy? Mental health needs are diverse and nuanced, and you can change design solutions without understanding the real stressors that students are facing in their environment. Always don't have the luxury of building all new stock of housing. They must depend on existing structures that they might have on campus and the bones of the building. If they're okay, they might need to create new, larger windows, for instance, or improve access to daylight and acoustic privacy, like upgrading those types of things. And the layouts can improve without doing a brand new building. So I think some of the most stressful aspects of housing are crowds, large crowds, noise, lack of privacy, those kinds of things. And they can be fixable without a major renovation. So I know a lot of times we're talking about new construction and providing these things on campuses, but a lot of times these biophilic upgrades that we've been talking about or lighting improvements can be done on campuses without really tearing down walls and creating something special within their existing structures.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And thank you very much for accepting my invitation to Student Housing Unlocked. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
You too. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed it.
Me too. Thank you for listening to Student Housing Unlocked. Make sure to tune in for the next episode of our series. For more news, trend stories, and podcast episodes, visit multihousingnews.com. Moreover, don't hesitate to join MHN's Executive Council. Every month, we discuss the latest trends and topics with leading experts in the field, and your input could be extremely helpful. To join, please send an email to jessica.fiur@cpe-mhn.com. Have a great day, and we can't wait to see you on our next episode.